And welcome back to Jeff Kanenge live here at Citizen Television on the bench today. That's right, the man who can only answer these questions because there's been an IPO that's been running belonging to Kenya Pipeline Company. It started on January 19th and it's going to go all the way to February 19th, which means there's 8 days to go. Now listen to this. Government of Kenya is to sell 65% stake in Kenya Pipeline. 1.8 billion ordinary shares are to be sold. The share price will be set at 9 shillings per share. The Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury and Economic Planning, John Mbadi, is on the bench. Is Mbadi a good buddy or bad buddy? First of all, FCPA, what does that mean?
As a fellow
of
Certified Public Accountants of Kenya.
Wow.
Fellow of the Institute.
So you're a smart guy?
Well, that is for Jeff, it's for you to decide.
You look like a smart guy. Okay, so how far are we with the IPO with 8 days to go? And how many offers have you received for these shares?
Well, in terms of the book build, that is what we call it, people who are offering or expressing interests, and there is a way to express interests, that the details I'm yet to get, but in terms of figures, but the indication is that we are doing very well, especially among certain categories of investors. Remember, we decided to categorize investors because we didn't want to disadvantage some investors. Number one is out of this 65%, if we take it as 100%, 5% of it will go to the employees or staff of Kenya Pipeline Company. Because they have put a lot, they have invested a lot in terms of working for that company, we feel it is necessary for them to have a share, a piece, a pie of it. Then we have 15% reserved for the oil marketers, both local and international. And the oil marketers, of course, because they are serious, major stakeholders in this company. Then 20% is left for Kenyans, the individual Kenyans, what we call the retail market, the retail sector, the individuals, you and I, to buy. So 20% is available. Then we have another 20% available for institutional local investors. Those are the major companies, the insurance companies, the pension funds, the mutual trusts, and such like. And then we have another 20% to our neighbors in the East African region, in the spirit of neighborliness, and bearing in mind that pipeline is actually serving the market in the region, in the East African region, notably Uganda, where 32 to 38% of our revenue, the revenue of KPC, comes from the Ugandan market. So we have given them an offer to have that 20%. That final 20% is for the other international investors. So far, international investors, the investors from the East African region, and institutional investors, I'm told, have even oversubscribed. We are still expecting more to come from the oil marketers and also the retail investors, and also, of course, the staff. My only appeal to Kenyans is that this is an offer that was made to allow Kenyans to share wealth. It is democratizing wealth, broadening ownership of KPC as a jewel. And it is actually an initiative of inclusivity in economic growth and development.
Tell me something, who is managing the sale?
Of course, we have transaction advisors. Yeah. The lead, the transaction advisor is actually, if you may be interested, KCB Capital. But there are others who are coming in as legal supporters and others to support the sale.
Yeah. Tell me, how was the share price arrived at? And let me take you back 18 years when Safaricom share price was offered. Remember, it was at 5 shillings, and then it went down to 3 shillings when it was released. KPC is going for 9 shillings a share. Is that realistic?
Very realistic. Circumstances first are different, Jeff. Remember, Safaricom as a company, when it was listed for IPO was not as profitable as KPC is today. I want to let Kenyans understand that this is a company that is debt-free. Start from there. Number one, debt-free company. Number two, the assets of this company, the value of this company is 163 billion because it has assets spread across the region and very strategic, so to speak. The other thing that needs to be noted is that this is a very profitable company with a profit, making profit of about 8.8 billion, 8.48 billion last year.
But then, yeah, the Treasury said it was somewhere around 10 billion and change.
Pardon?
The Treasury.
Yes.
They said it was more than 8 billion, about 10 billion.
Yeah, that's you know that I'm talking about the profit for last year. But you are talking about maybe the average profit or what we see as the realistic profit for KPC. Remember, the profit for last year, we had to factor in a lot, so many other adjustments. This you may not understand, but there are some exceptional items, adjustments that have to be made because now you're making full disclosure. Certain provisions, if you're an accountant, you'd understand that certain provisions which were made now, which were disclosed in the statements, were now being provided in the P&L, so that we don't overestimate or or exaggerate the profit, so to speak. But if it was just a normal functioning company, there are certain provisions that you just disclose. Like, for example, there's a running court case, which had to now to be provided for in the statement as an expense, because we are offering it to the market. We don't want to turn around next year, then you realize that the courts have determined a case against KPC, and then you say, why didn't you tell us? So we are providing for it as an expense, so that when even the courts determine the same, it is already expensed. So that is why you will find that profit for last financial year probably could be down. But I will tell you, this is a fantastic, profitable, major asset for us that we are offering to the market with all the advantages that you can think about.
If someone is listening to you for the very first time,
yes.
What do you tell them? You tell them this is a good thing?
I am telling Kenyans that it would be really interesting, because let me tell you, I was in Uganda a while back, I think last week, and Ugandans were very unhappy that we are only offering 20% to East Africa region. And they are saying they have a major stake. And we told them, no, by and large, this is a Kenyan company that we are offering to the market. But it is okay as neighbors, you can invest, but you can't invest more than Kenyans at this point in time. It would be very interesting for Kenyans to take their time now, when the shares are offered at 9 shillings, only to find that tomorrow they will now have to go to the Nairobi Securities Exchange and buy it at a premium. Look, professional investors, strategic investors, and international investors have already oversubscribed for purchase of shares. Therefore, the signal that is sending to Kenyans, and these are people who take their time really to analyze and understand the value of the asset before they put their resources in. So it is an appeal that I'm making to our retail investors, that they're the ones who are probably lagging behind. It is time for them so that they invest. We don't want a situation where by the time we close, then when this IPO is analyzed, then we end up again allocating shares that was meant to you and I as locals who have grown this company, then we now give it to other investors. Fine, we are a global community, but we will end up now buying these shares because they will be traded in the Nairobi Securities Exchange at a premium, and we'll be giving money out to.
Waziri, you talk about KPC, Kenya Pipeline Company, being such a success.
Yes.
Why not just allow professionals to run it?
And that is exactly what we are doing. We are privatizing so that professionals run it. You see, Jeff, the government, and I repeat this statement every time I talk about privatization, the government is actually not in the business of doing business. The governments only step in when there are distortions in the market and they want to correct. Kenya as an economy has matured enough now, as we speak, in terms of being a free market economy. And I will tell you that there are a lot of advantages that go with privatization or putting companies in the hands of the private sector. First, access to capital is very critical. A company like KPC must be now dynamic enough and respond to challenges in the market. And that cannot be achieved if KPC is still going to have very intense government controls. And that is why you need to free KPC so that there is less government involvement. We retain the regulatory framework and policy decisions. Excuse me, because governments are supposed to be policymakers and regulatory and provide regulatory framework. That is what governments should do, not to compete with the private sector in running business. So any mature assets need, for you to optimize its value, you need to offer it to the private sector largely and have more professional input in terms of efficiency and also ease of raising capital. Because in the global economy where we are today, to remain competitive, you must be able to quickly get to the capital market and access it.
Yeah. Tell me, what is the motivation here? Is it selling off a lucrative asset to benefit Kenyans, or the desire for those in government to cash in on an asset that remains or brings in cash flow? What's the motivation?
The motivation is that we have realized that we have a very mature asset that we need to optimize its value. Remember, Jeff, when I hear people say that this government is rushing, the story around KPC. Actually, KPC has been kept in the vault for too long. Now we have to open the vault and allow KPC to come out and take it to the Nairobi Securities and Exchange and compete to be where it belongs with big brothers like Safaricom and the rest. KPC's story of privatization did not start yesterday. Remember, in 2009, the Kibaki government had already made a resolution in the cabinet through a cabinet memorandum that KPC was supposed to be privatized. This took inordinately too long for reasons that are not clear. In fact, it outlived Kibaki government after making that decision just because of prevarication. And it came to to Uhuru government for 10 years, no action. Now this government is saying, we need not to keep this asset that needs to now grow bigger. Allow private sector involvement in it. That's number one. Number two, we can also raise money from it and do other serious public infrastructure project investments. Because again, Jeff, it is a fact that we need to put money in our infrastructure. Today we are talking about drought. This drought, we have talked about it forever. Yeah. We have said we need to prepare better for drought. Why is it that we have a period and season of long rains in this part of the world? And the rains cause a lot of damages in terms of challenges that we see, sweeping homes, and then later, then we have prolonged period of drought and people die again. So what we are saying is we need resources to put in bankable projects. Bankable projects simply mean commercially viable projects, like irrigation, agriculture. We can do mega dams in this country and store water. It should not just be a talk and blames all the time that what is the government doing. We must now walk the talk. And you cannot walk the talk with the constrained fiscal space that we have. By investing in those mega dams, each require upwards of 30 billion. With the constrained fiscal space and the demand for resources, beginning with education, going to health, going to others like security, we don't have that space. Our taxes are already constrained. We cannot go for more taxes. You can see we are even going for lowering of taxes. Yeah. Number two, we cannot again continue going into the debt market and start borrowing. So we need to look at our mature assets, raise money and put in an infrastructure fund, and I'm happy that bill has now gone to the National Assembly for consideration. Maybe I'll talk about it. This National Infrastructure Fund will help in de-risking public investment infrastructure projects, which are commercially viable, and then we will crowd in the private sector funds into this from institutional investors, and we will do our major highways that are commercially viable by dwelling them. 2, we are going to do Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, and the process is already ongoing. We want to break the ground soon. We will also do energy projects like energy generation and transmission. This country requires not less than 10 million megawatts, but we are only producing 3. All right? So where do we get the 7? The 7 will come from serious investment, and that we cannot do with the current arrangement. We have to think outside the box. We must be creative and innovative, and the best way to do that is to release some of the shares, the assets that the government own, which have matured enough and can be released to the market. We raise the money, we put in this fund, and then the fund will now help in crowding the private sector.
Wazir, what does that mean? What does that mean when it comes to domestic borrowing?
The only way to reduce domestic borrowing or borrowing in general is to have alternative financing to our budget, because we cannot stop living, Jeff. And the country is growing in terms of population and in terms of demand and even challenges. 1, education sector. 3 years ago, actually 3 years ago, when Ruto became the president of this country, we were spending 540 billion in education. This budget that I took to cabinet yesterday is proposing 767 billion. That is over 200 billion in 3 years. And still you can hear noise that we are not. And it is genuine noise, because if you look at that funding, it's still far short of what we should provide for education. But it's already 26.8% of our budget going to education alone. Health sector, we are already funding, look, the primary health care together with emergency, chronic, and critical illnesses at 25.1 billion in the 25-26 budget. Then we'll add to the contributions to SHA and SHIF, which is an insurance, 84 billion. Add to the insurance that we pay to SHA as a government for our public servants, teachers, police officers, and the rest. We are still paying some money for their insurance, isn't it?
Yeah.
That added is so much billions, is in excess of 120, 130 billion. Remember, health is also largely devolved. Counties are also putting in a lot of money. What I'm saying is health requires a lot of funding, education requires a lot of funding, security. A lot of times Kenyans say, why are we spending so much in security? A lot of information is not known to the public, known to some of us who are policymakers and who are interacting with day-to-day happenings of what is happening. If we don't spend some resources on security and something happens to this country in terms of attack, then what we are talking about of money we will provide will never be there, because there will be no economy to run. So all this cumulatively, plus cash transfer and support social programs and all that, we cannot support all these and have resources available to do our roads the way we should do them. That's why we accumulated over the years, from 2005, Jeff, to now, to actually 2024, December, we had bills under the road sector in excess of 100 billion shillings that were verified. In fact, there were more than that before they were verified. Now, how are we going to fund all these with the current budget that we have? This accumulation has been because we don't have enough resources to implement capital projects. So this is an innovative way of raising the funds, and that is why we have decided as a government that this money, we are not going to use it to support the budget in the traditional way of supporting budgets, or where we say, okay, we have got the money, we will pay salaries, we will buy fuel and the rest. We are only going to target those expenditures in our budget on projects that are bankable, projects that are commercially viable. We take them out and finance them through this National Infrastructure Fund. What is the implication of that? The implication is that those projects will be able to pay back, because there will be revenue generation out of those projects back to this fund to keep the fund a revolving fund for generations to come.
Tell me something. With Kenyans being so untrusting of your government, when it comes to accountability, because what comes to mind is Eurobond, remember?
Right,
Eurobond.
that's correct.
Some people still don't know what happened to Eurobond. There was no visible infrastructure from that.
That is why, Jeff, I agree with you absolutely. Kenyans' trust on our government is low. But this is not unique to Kenya, Jeff. I will tell you, share experiences with other jurisdictions. Generally, the governed usually don't have much trust on those who govern them. But the only way to deal with the lack of trust is, A, to communicate. That's number one way of building trust. And when you communicate, let them see action. Now, in terms of communication, that's why we are involving Kenyans in what we want to do. And we are communicating it very clearly, that this is what we are intending to do. We are not pretending on anything. We are saying we are divesting this number of shares in Safaricom. We are also privatizing KPC. This is what we intended to raise, and this is where we are taking it. Now, the other way of ensuring that that trust is built is the other two ways. The second one is, where are we going to apply the money? We are very clear that we are not going to use the proceeds of privatization and proceeds of divestiture in supporting the budget in the normal way. We want the money to be traced. You've talked about Eurobond. The reason why Eurobond cannot be traced is because it is for general budgetary support. When you talk about general budgetary support, it means it supports the deficit and it does not go to specific capital project or some specific project. That is how commercial borrowing works in this country and even elsewhere. So we are going to have a situation where if NIF, the National Infrastructure Fund, is investing in JKIA, Kenyans know that JKIA is costing us $2 billion, for example. Out of that, equity capital will be, say, 30%, which is 60 billion. The rest will be maybe debt capital. And this equity capital, the government of Kenya, through National Infrastructure Fund, will support, say, 50%, which is 30 billion. It will be clear. And we know 30 billion of NIF funds has gone to JKIA. Whatever billion has gone to such and such a dam. That is what second accountability mechanism. The last one, we have already prepared a legislation which has already gone to Parliament, National Assembly. I signed off the bill on 12th of January. It went to the National Assembly. They will start deliberations. They will conduct public participation. We have spelled out clearly in terms of governance structure how the sourcing of funding into this, what is the object of the National Infrastructure Fund, the governance structure. We are removing political interference from that fund. In fact, we have even provided in the bill that if you have worked with a government institution, which is a GOE, that is a commercially viable or a state-owned enterprises, for 5 years after working with that institution, you are not supposed to serve in the board of NIF. If you have been in politics and you have been in membership of a political party and clearly influencing the decision of the political, we are saying you have to stand aside of this fund for at least 5 years. Not that politicians don't have brains, that they cannot run this fund, but we want to just depoliticize and reduce possibility of accusations that we are populating this fund with so-called political rejects and our friends and cronies. We want to make this fund as independent and as efficient and as professional as possible.
All right, Wazir, I want to take a break, come back and ask you the question, what if Kenyans don't hear your call to buy shares? What's the government going to do? I want to ask that after the break. All right, folks, you're listening to the FCPA. He's a fellow Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury and Economic Planning, John Mbadi. What do you think? Is he a Mbadi boy or a good boy? Keep tweeting at Konanga Jeff, at Citizen TV Kenya, hashtag, look, he's smiling at me, hashtag is JK.
No, but bad is not a synonym of bad, Jeff.
Take a live text break, we'll be back in a moment.